All right, so ready to dive in. Today we're looking at something a little different, a poem.
Oh, a poem?
Yeah, but not just any poem. This one's special. It's based on a book called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder.
I've heard of that. It's about, like, resisting authoritarianism, right?
Right. And this poem, well, it takes all those, like, big, complex ideas from the book.
And boils them down to what? 20 steps.
Exactly. 20 steps to, safeguard freedom. It's like a...
A cheat sheet for democracy.
Exactly.
So should we just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it. The first line is a real attention grabber. Do not obey in advance. Resist the first demand.
Whoa, yeah. It's like right out of the gate, it's telling you, wake up.
It feels so urgent, like there's no time to waste.
Yeah, and it connects to this thing, this pattern you see throughout history.
Like with how tyranny takes hold.
Exactly. It often starts small,
Yeah.
right? Like little requests, demands that seem...
Like they're not a big deal.
Yeah, almost like testing the waters. But each time you give in, it's like...
It chips away at what are democratic norms.
Exactly. And that paves the way for, well, for more control. Think about,
Oh, like Nazi Germany.
yeah, like that. At first, a lot of people probably saw Hitler's demands as,
Extreme, but maybe not like super dangerous.
Right. They went along thinking they could control the situation, but each compromise...
It just made it easier for the Nazis
to gain more power. And, well, we know how that ended.
It's terrifying how easily things can shift, how we can become complacent.
This poem, and Snyder's book too, it's a wake-up call for sure.
And line 8 really hits on that, like, need for early action. Stand out early when silence surrounds. The first to speak may turn the tides around.
Oh, that's a good one.
It makes me think about those people, throughout history who
spoke up when no one else would.
Yeah, even when it was risky, when they were all alone.
It's about recognizing when silence isn't, a good thing.
When it's actually...
Complicity, it makes you think, what would it look like to stand out early in our own lives, right?
What are those moments where speaking up might be...
uncomfortable.
Yeah, but also really necessary.
Absolutely. But it's not just about individual action either, right?
There's that line about institutions. Defend institutions, for they hold the line, their fall is a signal, a dangerous sign.
Institutions, yeah. As Snyder says, they're like...
The immune system of a democracy.
Exactly.
Huh.
They're there to, like, identify threats.
And protect us from, abuses of power.
Exactly. Think about Watergate, for example. Those journalists...
They didn't give up, they kept digging.
And they held a corrupt president accountable. That's like institutions working the way they're supposed to.
But when those institutions are weakened or corrupted themselves,
then the whole system becomes vulnerable. And that's where the whole idea of truth comes in, which this poem talks about a lot.
Yeah, remember ethics, let truth sustain. Then there's believe in truth, resist the fog, and investigate, be your own guide.
It's all connected, right? Institutions rely on a shared understanding of truth to function.
But what happens when truth itself is under attack? With all the...
Disinformation, propaganda. Oh, yeah. That's a huge problem today.
The poem is urging us to, be more critical of the information we're consuming.
Absolutely. We have to be our own fact checkers in a way. Look at history. Look at how authoritarian regimes...
They've always used propaganda to control people.
To manipulate them. Because if they can erode trust in truth...
then they can control the narrative.
And ultimately control everything else. It's scary how relevant that is now.
Resist the fog. It can feel overwhelming with so much information coming at us from everywhere.
I know, right? It's a constant battle. I try to be really mindful of where I'm getting my information from.
So fact-checking, looking at different sources.
Exactly. Questioning my own biases, It's about actively looking for the truth.
Not just accepting whatever pops up on our screens.
Right. And then there's that whole idea of connection, which the poem brings up in a few places.
Take responsibility for face-to-face. Dehumanization thrives in a faceless space.
Wow, yeah. It makes you think about how much we interact online now.
And how easy it is to forget about,
real human connection.
Exactly.
And that's what tyranny feeds on, right?
Okay.
Isolation. Fear.
It wants to divide us, make us see each other as...
the enemy.
But the poem is telling us to do the opposite.
To connect, to build community.
Make eye contact, build human ties. It's such a simple but powerful message.
It's like an antidote to all that division and hate.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
And that we're stronger together. And then there's that line I love, practice politics, not just at the polls.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about so much more than just voting.
It's about being active in your community, getting involved in local government.
Having those tough conversations with people who see things differently.
You know, it reminded me of something. I went to this town hall meeting recently about a development project.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was packed. People were really passionate on both sides. It wasn't always, polite and agreeable.
But it was democracy in action.
Exactly. And it reminded me that change often happens at the local level.
And that our voices really do matter. So we've talked about individual action, institutions, truth, connection.
And the poem ends by reminding us to look beyond our own little bubbles.
Learn from abroad the paths they've trod, and learn from history its lessons endure.
Snyder's a historian, right? So this is where his expertise really shines through.
He's saying we need to study how other countries have resisted tyranny.
What worked for them, what didn't work. He talks about the Czech resistance to the Soviets, for example,
Oh, they used humor and art and underground publications.
to challenge the regime. It shows that resistance can take many forms.
But he's also warning us
And
against,
repeating the mistakes of the past,
like, history can be a roadmap
showing us what to avoid.
and how to build a better future. But it's so easy to think of history as just, like, something in the past.
That has nothing to do with us.
But that line, learn from history, its lessons endure, it's a reminder that the past is always speaking to us.
If we're willing to listen.
So are there any historical parallels that worry you right now?
Honestly, the whole rise of disinformation, the attacks on institutions.
Yeah.
We've seen this before, and it usually doesn't end well.
It makes this poem feel even more urgent.
Like, we have to wake up and do
We
something.
can't be complacent. We have to be active, informed, and engaged if we want to protect our freedoms.
This poem it's powerful.
It's like a shot of espresso for the soul.
You said it.
It's a reminder that freedom is fragile, but also that we're not powerless. Each of us can make a difference.
Absolutely. It starts with understanding history, being aware of what's happening now,
And being willing to stand up for what we believe in.
even when it's hard.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask,
Yeah.
which of these 20 steps to freedom really resonated with you? Which line are you going to carry with you today?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And how will you use it in your own life? Think about that as we sign off.
Yeah, think about that.